from where we are, just from recording on a computer,
Mm-hmm.
and just manipulate that a little bit to provide for like a more complex background that we can improvise off of.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, just be using kind of, we just kind of figured, or we thought about the instruments or found objects that we've been using. So we haven't really, that might be something that we want to develop a little bit more on.
Okay.
What kind of sounds correlate best to like a city environment or a nature environment.
Okay.
But yeah, so like kind of just, we thought like stuff like silverware and coins and like
wood,
and like the bottles and would kind of correlate pretty well with nature. Just kind of like that kind of more continuous stream of sounds.
And are you thinking of this sort of as a sequential thing, or are you thinking of sort of like, for example, you start with pure nature and then you switch to pure man-made sounds, or are you thinking of blending them in more sort of an organic way?
Yeah,
or
that's also something I'm completely
well, I think people could do like start with the nature sounds, like you hear a flame sound, and then maybe like show that we're moving in, and like add a sound of like cars driving, because there's sounds of cars you can just record in here on the road, and then that would be like a transition to another type of environment. You could use, I don't know, like I have a recording from Starbucks in New York. You could use that one, or it's hard to travel to New York right now, but I'm sure we can find something like from YouTube or something
Sure.
like that, and like record the sound from there, of like hot beat megapolis, outside. Because what I have from Starbucks is from the inside. So again, like I've noticed when I wasn't there that eventually all the sounds in there like just were silent. They're just tuned down. There's like a altogether like a hum going on, but like it's hard to distinguish what else is going on there. So like eventually that noisy place becomes silent to you.
So you're actually talking about sort of almost a wallpaper effect where everything is so common and similar that you start to ignore it because it's just failing in the background. That's an interesting.
Or allow you to kind of emphasize certain sounds at different points in the piece and kind of raise some up and lower some, and then for different parts of the piece, make it nice so you're focusing in on one specific experience.
I would also suggest thinking about creating the dynamic between just environment sound with live sound, and just live sound. So that you can have contrast and you can flow in and out and use that as a way to develop the piece. The other thing is that from my own experience working with environment sounds, there was for example, I remember the duo that you guys did with the water, that sounded electronic. Like it didn't sound like water. So one thing that's interesting is to play with the idea, or think about playing with the idea of moving between sounds that are man-made and sounds that are in nature, that when you listen to them and you're not seeing them, they're actually similar.
I think it'd be kind of cool. This might be more like of a process-oriented thing, but kind of depending on what environment sound we eventually develop on the computer through recording, both in nature and society or civilization and whatnot, to try and find like at least a vague ultimate pattern that you can kind of either through like playing them on top of each other or by emphasizing certain parts in one and certain parts in the other, to kind of blend into a new, and maybe that'll be the culminating part of the piece. But
Yeah, no, that sounds good.
then also an idea kind of off of the footsteps that was created. It might be kind of cool to have as like kind of like a metronome effect, and in terms of just like motion through the piece, like with walking, so like you're literally traversing a natural environment into civilized environment and back into like quasi-natural civilized environment.
Yeah, that sounds.
And then like the footsteps can have actual relationship to the environment, the fact of whether you're just walking on grass, or walking on sticks, or walking through water, or marble.
You can also have multiple people doing the walking, right? If you're in megapolis, it's like hard to imagine there would be one person walking at a time.
Yeah.
Versus at Williams, you can actually hear one person walking.
Yeah.
And you can have like many people walking on like cement, or you can have one person just walking on grass, or one person walking through water or something like that.
Yeah. Now, do you guys have audio recorders that you can sample the sounds with, or
I have a computer.
you can use that. You can use, so computer will be okay. Yeah.
The quality isn't great, but
Yeah. The other thing is that I have a couple of these, and these are better quality. I could let you borrow one of them, and
because like if we're especially for recording with very very fine sounds,
yes.
very very silent,
Yeah.
that would have been great.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing the other thing as well is, does anybody have Cool Edit that actually works on their computer? You do. You can use. I can show you a couple of tools for clearing up sounds. If it's
I've like experimented.
with, there's a hiss reduction and there's a noise reduction.
Yeah.
Do you know how to use the noise reduction? That's a good one.
I just like clicked on it.
Well, what you do is
It's a little better.
what you do in noise reduction is you take a sample of a sound that's in the recording that you want to get rid of. So if there's like a hiss between the quiet sounds, you go in and you open that dialog box first, and you click on Take Sample, and then you click Close, and then you go back and select the whole sample, and then you go in and you hit OK, and it will reduce the hiss dramatically. The only thing is that if you have a sound of a person walking and you want to have it an environment sound, and you click and you select the part that when they're not walking is environment sound, it will erase the whole environment. You'll just hear the walking, so it'll sound like they're walking in a concert hall with nobody in it. So anyway, you can play with filters and stuff like that to try to get the stuff going on. I would say what you need to think about for Friday is a structure. A structure that explores the dynamics that you talked about, and that I suggested. For example, the dynamics between when is it just environment sound, environment and instruments, and just instruments. That's one dynamic. Or how you're going to move between them, or how and what ways are the instruments going to interact with what sounds, or what are your environment samples and what sounds do you have that can interact with that. Or if you're going to have a kind of a long-term structure of sort of this idea of walking, then how are you going to use that to structure the whole piece Right. So right, and I think this is probably because what you're doing is you're going to have a good amount of sampled sound and a good amount of structure based on that sampled sound. So I think that would probably lay out the structure of the piece. And then what you should do is you should think about how to spread those out, especially if your idea is actually silence, or the idea of sound as being background and silence. How you're going to spread that out with interactions with the ensemble. So.
Always said about having like the base of just recording and then kind of putting like animal noise or whatever on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
Could we use that one pad thing to kind of improvise those?
Yeah, we could make a Max MSP patch that you can use to do that. The other aspect of this too is it's more difficult. If you're going to do live sampling, then you have to know that whatever the microphone is pointed at. So if it's in a room when you're performing the whole piece, it's going to sample the whole piece. The thing you're trying to live sample close up will be the most prominent one, but the whole sound will be in the piece. So you might think of having a section, if you want to do some live sampling, where you actually, the point of that section is to exhibit that piece, the live sample, the live sounds, so that you hear them isolated, the audience hears them isolated, but also that you can grab them with the sampling in the computer as a pure sound. And then you grab those samples live, and then the piece goes on, and then you can have I can help you design this, you can have other buttons that you press afterwards that transforms those sounds. Transforms them, plays them slower, plays them faster, overlays them, all kinds of stuff, different stuff like that. Puts a filter on them and makes it kind of sound space agey, whatever it is that you want to do. So that's a dynamic that you can do as well. If you're going to do that, probably by Friday, tell me the ideas that you want to do with that, and then I can make a patch for you in the program that I showed you, Max MSP, and then we can work on that when we come back next Wednesday, and we can also try a little bit of that on the Friday class. So I would say make a plan so that you don't have to have everything exactly planned out, but have sort of several sections of sketch that we can try out on Friday, and even try to bring in some sampled sounds that you want to use, and you can try them out, we can record them, and then you'll have between next Friday and a week from next Wednesday, so you'll have almost 2 weeks. Now everybody's going to be away, but you can still, communicate through email or work, and then by next Wednesday, you should be ready to bring the whole thing in with a score and get ready to play the whole thing through. And then Friday will be another test to kind of fine tune things and do that. So that sounds good. And if you have questions or you have ideas about technical things anytime, just give me an email and we can talk about it over email, even when we're on break. So, okay, so let's